In my little town, nestled between the whispering pines and the sleepy hills, life moved like the gentle flow of the river that cut through its heart. I'm the librarian, the keeper of tales and secrets in a place where both seem to abound in quiet abundance. My days were a symphony of rustling pages and the soft footsteps of the occasional visitor, seeking solace in a written word as I did. The town, with its cobblestone paths and ivy-draped buildings, had always been a character in its own right, quaint and unassuming. Yet, beneath its picturesque surface, I sensed a narrative more complex, threads of the unknown woven into the fabric of our everyday existence. It wasn't something I could easily explain, but rather a feeling that would catch me in the quiet moments, a chill down my spine when passing the old Mason property, a fleeting shadow in the corner of my vision at dusk, or the inexplicable way the wind seemed to carry whispers after nightfall. Life here was as normal as I supposed it could be, until the peculiarities began to mount. It started with minor oddities, books misplaced in the library, records slightly askew, and the occasional murmur of unease among the townsfolk. But then, the fabric of normalcy started to fray more noticeably. People I had known my whole life began to look past me with veiled eyes, carrying secrets in their hurried steps. I was content in my world of books and quiet contemplation, yet as these anomalies grew, so did my curiosity. Unbeknownst to me, this curiosity would soon lead me down a path tangled with horror and wonder, into the heart of the town's most guarded mysteries. My days, once marked by the predictable rhythm of library duties, began to unravel as the town's peculiarities crept into my once peaceful sanctuary. Books I had meticulously organized were found misplaced, not just by the chaos of use, but deliberately hidden or rearranged. Notes, scribbled in a frantic, illegible hand, appeared in the margins of ancient texts, speaking of rituals and gateways. It was as if the library itself was becoming a cryptic puzzle, each anomaly a clue beckoning me deeper into the town's hidden narrative. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the library's stained glass windows, I stumbled upon a book I had never seen before. Its cover was leather, worn and etched with symbols that seemed to dance and shift under my gaze. The title was an unpronounceable amalgamation of letters and glyphs, and its pages were filled with bizarre illustrations and languages I couldn't identify. My heart raced with a mix of fear and fascination as I pored over its contents, the air around me growing thick with a palpable tension. The strangeness of my days bled into the nights. Sleep became elusive, punctuated by dreams of vast, starless skies and voices whispering in an unknown tongue. During these restless nights, I would often wander the quiet streets of the town, the moon casting eerie shadows on the cobblestone paths. It was on one such night that I first saw them, the gatherings. They were always at the edge of my vision, a procession of figures robed in darkness, moving with purpose through the town's outskirts. I followed them at a distance, my curiosity ablaze that fear could not extinguish. The processions led to the woods, where the dense canopy of trees whispered secrets in the wind. Hidden from sight, I watched as the figures formed a circle, their chants rising in a crescendo that seemed to make the very air vibrate. The town, too, began to change. Animals behaved oddly, with birds flying in erratic patterns and dogs howling at empty spaces. The weather turned on a whim, sunny skies replaced by brooding storms that appeared out of nowhere, their lightning illuminating the woods where the robed figures met. My interactions with the townspeople grew increasingly unsettling. Conversations were clipped, eyes darted away, and attention hung in the air, thick and unspoken. The librarian in me yearned to research, to delve into historical records for explanations, but each inquiry led to more dead ends and whispered warnings. As the days passed, the boundary between my once ordered world and the creeping chaos blurred. I found traces of the cult's influence everywhere, in the symbols carved into the town's oldest trees, in the half-heard whispers at the market, and in the fearful glances of my neighbors. The library, my haven of knowledge, became the center of my investigation. I pored over every document, every book that could unravel the mystery of the town's descent into madness. The culmination of my search led me to a hidden room in the library's basement, long forgotten and covered in dust. Inside, I discovered old town records and diaries dating back centuries, their pages filled with accounts of the cult, their worship of a celestial entity, and the chilling rituals performed in its honor. These documents spoke of a prophecy, a night when the stars would align, and a gateway would open, bridging our world with the realms of their cosmic deity. Armed with this knowledge, I understood the gravity of my town's plight. The cult, woven into the very fabric of our history, was not just a relic of the past but a living, breathing force, preparing for an event that could unravel the boundary between our world and the horrors that lay beyond. My role as a librarian, once passive and scholarly, had transformed. I was now a keeper of forbidden knowledge, the only one seemingly aware and possibly capable of confronting a looming threat that encircled us all. As the days bled into nights, my world began to tilt. Each shift was subtle, a slow dance of shadows and half-seen figures in the periphery of my daily life. The library, my sanctuary of order and knowledge, became the stage for these peculiarities. Books I had meticulously organized were found misplaced, their contents disturbed, not by the hands of the forgetful or the careless, but with deliberate intent. I discovered volumes on ancient rites and cosmic myths opened and left with margins filled with feverish notes in a language that twisted my thoughts, its characters like nothing I had seen before. The town's behavior grew increasingly bizarre. Whispers filled the air, yet silence fell like a shroud when I approached. Figures cloaked in the gloom of twilight congregated in hushed circles, breaking apart with unnatural swiftness as I neared. Animals, too, acted against nature. Dogs howled at empty spaces, and cats watched the nothingness with arched backs and hissing breaths. One evening, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, I followed a procession of cloaked figures from a distance. They moved with purpose, winding through the woods to a clearing I had never encountered, despite my many wanderings. There, under the sickly light of a crescent moon, the group assembled around an ancient stone structure, obscured by the overgrowth of untamed wilderness but unmistakably deliberate in its construction. Hidden by the underbrush, I watched as they began their ritual, their chants a cacophony of sound that seemed to warp the very air around us. The ground vibrated with the energy of their words, and the air thickened, as if reality itself was bending, warping under the weight of their incantations. At the ritual's climax, a figure stepped forward, robed and masked, holding aloft a tome that seemed to absorb the moonlight, its pages aglow with a phosphorescent sheen. As the figure read aloud, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable change that tasted of ozone and ancient dust. The woods themselves seemed to hold their breath, and for a moment, the veil between worlds thinned. Through the cracks of this reality, I glimpsed something else, an abyss so vast and dark it threatened to swallow not just the light, but the very essence of existence. The cultist's deity, as I would come to understand, was not of our world or our comprehension. It belonged to the cosmos, to the spaces between stars, where light and sanity were consumed by the insatiable darkness. This entity, this cosmic horror, was their god, and the ritual was a bridge, a beacon, calling across the void. In that moment, as the boundaries of reality frayed, I saw the entity's form, or lack thereof, a mass of writhing shadows and eyes that burned with the cold fire of distant galaxies. It was a glimpse into madness, into a truth so alien and vast that my mind recoiled in terror. The ritual ended as abruptly as it had begun, the figures dispersing and the entity retreating from the breach, leaving behind a silence that throbbed with unseen energy. I left the clearing with a racing heart and a mind teeming with questions and dread. The town's secret was a chasm of cosmic horror, hidden beneath the veneer of normalcy, and I had peered into its depths. With this revelation, my role shifted from a passive observer to an unwilling participant in a narrative much larger and more terrifying than the quiet life I had cherished. The cult's knowledge of my witnessing was inevitable, and I knew then that the quiet librarian of a sleepy town had to prepare for the storm to come. The days following my harrowing discovery were laden with a palpable tension, like the charged air before a storm. My every move felt shadowed, not just by the watchful eyes of the townspeople but by something unseen, an oppressive weight that seemed to press against the very fabric of my existence. The library, once my haven, now felt like a cage, trapping me with the knowledge of the horror lurking at the edge of reality. I continued my research, delving into the forbidden and forgotten texts I had unearthed, seeking anything that could help me understand or counter the cult's intentions. Night after night, I pored over ancient manuscripts and arcane tomes, my mind teetering on the brink of comprehension and madness.
The entity they worshipped was a being of the cosmos, beyond ancient, its desires and motives as alien as its form. The cult believed that bringing this entity into our world would grant them unimaginable power and enlightenment, but I saw the truth. It would mean our annihilation, the erasure of our reality by a force that knew no empathy or reason. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening, as I locked the library's doors, I sensed the immediate wrongness in the air, a static charge of impending doom. Turning, I found myself encircled by the cloaked figures of the cult, their faces hidden, but their intent clear in the cold moonlight. The leader, the one I had seen at the ritual, stepped forward, his voice a serpentine hiss.
"You have seen what should not be seen," he said, his words laced with a threat. "You cannot be allowed to interfere."
I felt fear, certainly, but also a fierce determination not to cower before this man who served a cosmic horror with blind devotion. "You're meddling with forces that you don't understand," I countered, my voice steady despite the tremor of fear. "Bringing that thing here will destroy us all." He laughed, a sound devoid of true amusement.
"No, librarian, it is you who does not understand. We are but specks to it, but in its presence, we will be transcended."
They advanced, and instinctively, I backed towards the library. The knowledge within those walls was my only weapon. As they moved to grab me, I darted inside, pushing through the aisles to the restricted section where I had hidden the most potent of the texts I'd found. With the cultists breaking through the entrance, I hastily constructed a barrier using the arcane symbols and incantations I had learned. It wasn't much, but it slowed them, their enraged shouts muffled by the protective ward. I scrambled through the pages of an ancient grimoire, seeking a way to sever the entity's connection to our world, to prevent the cataclysm they sought to unleash. As they breached my makeshift defenses, I found what I needed, a ritual of banishment, complex and demanding, but it was a chance. The library around us began to distort, the walls bending, the very air shimmering as the entity's presence neared, called forth by its followers outside. With the cult bearing down on me, I began the incantation, the words foreign and twisted on my tongue. Reality buckled, and I felt the gaze of the entity upon me, a pressure that threatened to crush my very soul. But I held firm, my voice growing stronger, the symbols around me glowing with a fierce light. As I spoke the final words, a shockwave of force erupted, sweeping the cultists off their feet and shattering the windows. The connection to the entity snapped, the looming presence in my mind receding like a tide, leaving a vacuum of silence. The library, though damaged, stood firm, and the cultists lay scattered, their threat momentarily quelled. In the aftermath, I stood alone amidst the wreckage of books and broken shelves, the knowledge of what I had done, and what I had yet to face, settling in. The entity was repelled, but not defeated, and the cult, though weakened, would not forget my betrayal. The night's events had changed everything, thrusting me into a role I never sought but now could not abandon. I was the guardian at the threshold, the librarian who held the line between our world and the dark stars beyond. In the aftermath of that nightmarish confrontation, my life, much like the town's facade, could never return to its former quietude. The cult's activities ceased, at least to the naked eye, but the scars they left on the fabric of our reality and in my mind were indelible. I continued my work at the library, surrounded by the comfort of books, yet the echo of otherworldly chants lingered between the shelves, a whispering reminder of the thin veil between our world and the cosmic abyss. The townspeople, for the most part, remained blissfully unaware of the true nature of the horror that had brushed against our existence. Rumors of strange happenings in the woods or odd lights in the night sky were attributed to the overactive imaginations of the town's more eccentric residents. But the knowing glances and hushed conversations I intercepted told me the cult still had its adherents, biding their time, perhaps awaiting another chance to open the gateway for their god. For me, the encounter had irrevocably changed my perception of reality. The library became my sanctuary and my research center, the place where I could seek answers and perhaps find a way to protect against the threats lurking in the cosmic shadows. I delved into ancient texts and obscure lore, seeking knowledge about the entity and its followers, hoping to understand and perhaps foresee what might come next. As the guardian of this knowledge, I felt a responsibility to remain vigilant, to watch for signs of the cult's resurgence or the stirrings of other, perhaps even more formidable, cosmic entities. The charm of my once peaceful town now held a darker undertone, a reminder of the fragile barrier between our world and the horrors beyond. In this new reality, I found a purpose that transcended my previous life's quiet routine. The library, my bastion of knowledge, became the front line in a silent, unseen war against the encroaching darkness of the cosmos. And while I longed for the simplicity of my old life, I knew that ignorance was a luxury I could no longer afford, for the cost might be the very fabric of our reality itself.